I just start?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Hi, everybody. Okay, so tonight's class is going to be a little different from what I normally do, and probably a little different from what most of you all have seen before. There's going to be a lot of talking. So there's going to be kind of a lecture element to this. I'm going to try to intersperse as much as possible actual physical application. Otherwise, you're not going to remember this stuff anyway, right? There's a bunch of stuff that got thrown at you. So everybody come a little bit closer, right? Kind of semicircle a little bit. But okay, so what we're talking about today is how we even approach the fight. Like, how do we, when we walk into fight somebody, how are we taking at it? How do we, what's the decision-making process look like when we go into fight? Specifically, not so much how do you do it, or even how do I do it, but how does Lichtenauer tell us to do it? So when I say Lichtenauer, who knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say Lichtenauer, right? Okay, so most of you, right? For those of you who don't, short version, Johannes Lichtenauer was a guy in Germany. We used to think probably in the late 1300s, although there's some pretty good research right now suggesting it's more like the early to mid 1400s. Who would later be called the Grand Master or the Great High Master or the Ancient Master. And his teachings through his students, a group of guys called the Society of Lichtenauer, became the predominant way of looking at swordsmanship in Germany from basically sometime around the mid-late 1400s until probably around 1600, when longsword really began to kind of atrophy quite a bit and sort of go away. We see references to his teachings quite late. It's all over Joachim Meyer. Those of you know who Joachim Meyer is, and because of Joachim Meyer, it's all over Jakob Suter. And then we see it popping up in a bunch of other strange places for up until now, including in references to it in World War II contemporary books and so on. So Lichtenauer had more influence on fencing in Germany and the Germanic-speaking region than probably anybody else. There's a couple of scholars have a pet theory that Lichtenauer never actually existed. He was just sort of a made-up sword saint to sort of refer back to. That's possible, but I don't think there's any real evidence that suggests that, other than it's hard to pin down anything Lichtenauer actually said. Because Lichtenauer, like Socrates, didn't write anything down. Lichtenauer had a thing called the Zettel, right, or the recital, which was this long, terribly written, frankly, poem, which captured his entire art and is generally incomprehensible by someone who doesn't know his art. And it wasn't until the Society of Lichtenauer and other contemporaries of the Society of Lichtenauer that they wrote down the Zettel, and they wrote down what are called the gloss, or the glosses. And the gloss is a paragraph-by-paragraph description of what each verse or section of the Zettel means. And that's when somebody teaches you Zwerchhau and Zornhau, and they talk about the principles of the fight, they talk about German swordsmanship and Kunstfechtens, what we're generally actually talking about is what we have learned from the glosses written by those students of Lichtenauer who cared to write it down, because Lichtenauer didn't. Lichtenauer was coming probably from oral tradition. We have one image, one drawing, ostensibly of Lichtenauer. He's got a righteous beard, kind of like Justin's beard, right? He's got a righteous beard. Oh yeah, it's right there on his phone. Sweet. He's got a righteous beard. He's got a big furry hat, like you might expect to see like a Pole or a Russian wearing. He's wearing kind of a long coat, like you might expect to see a Pole or a Russian wearing. Many of the Society of Lichtenauer actually lived in what is now modern East Germany and Poland, so we think that was kind of the part of the world that he probably lived in. But he was also probably from Lichtenau, which is a little bit further east, west, sorry. So Lichtenauer wrote down a whole bunch of stuff, but the longest thing, his longest set of verses, and the one that was extrapolated the most on by his students and followers, if you will, was this. It was the long sword without armor. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, the long sword without armor. That said, all the stuff I'm going to talk about today actually applies to every single corner of Lichtenauer's art. From the unarmed and grappling components that we see in Haute de Dieu, up through the armored fighting that we see in places like Huntsveld and Peter von Danzig, to kind of dagger fighting that we see in Huntsville, Peter von Danzig, and then into some of the other sources that you may have heard of, like Hans Talhofer or some of these others. So you see that influence very rapidly in the 1400s spread very quickly. Some people will tell you that Lichtenauer wasn't the first guy to use Lichtenauer's verses. That's true. There was a guy who definitely existed before Lichtenauer called Berengois, or Berengois, who had a poem that was very, very similar to Lichtenauer's poem. And there's a very, very likely chance that Lichtenauer cribbed a whole bunch of his poem from Berengois' poem. And then made his modifications. Which back in the day was a sign that you were educated, it was not plagiarism. So, different standards at the time. All right, so we're talking about like how we fight. So, or what our decision-making process is like how we fight. A lot of this, therefore, comes down to stylistic differences. What is your style, right? How do you fight? So let's think of you guys football fans, right? Football's pretty big. Some of you.
Yeah.
All right. So like I know last night there was a Steelers-Redskins game. I was just looking at them in Pittsburgh, but I live in DC, you know. So I'm driving home from this conference I'm at right now, and I'm listening to the game on the radio, and they're talking about the style that these two teams have, right? And it talks about how the Redskins style is they tend to kind of glom around the ball. Wherever the ball is, that's where everybody is, right? I didn't catch what the Steelers style is supposed to be. So those of you who know, what is the Steelers kind of style? If you sum it up in a couple words.
Smash mouth.
Smash mouth. All right, there you go. So just hit them hard.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right, hit them hard. So when we're talking about longsword, right? What is your style? How do you make your decisions when you're going in to fight? What do you do?
I think about what I'm not good at and focus on not using that. Or not.
Okay, all right. No, that's pretty legit, right? I once had somebody tell me, like, Jake, you're good at so many things. Why is that? Like, I avoid the shit I'm bad at. Like, that's the secret. I'm good at all the things. Like, I'm not good at it. I'm not going to do that. Something I'm good at everything I do. It's amazing, right? Okay, so one is it so would you say that you fence conservatively?
It depends on the situation, but I know that I leave my right side open quite a bit.
Okay.
And I
So you said it depends on the situation. What about the situation helps you to decide what direction you're going to go and how you fight?
Depends on how aggressive my opponent is, how tall or short my opponent is, what their build is like, what their style is like.
Okay. So let's say your opponent is tall and aggressive. How do you fight?
Aggressive.
Okay. Let's say your opponent is short and aggressive. How do you fight?
Defensively.
Interesting. Why?
Because I'm able to maneuver more
Okay.
around somebody who is not around my same range.
Okay. All right. Good. Good.
That doesn't mean that I still don't get my ass beat. That just means
Okay. All right. All right. Who else? Who else has a style, a way that they fight? Jim?
Well, first, I look at, who I'm fighting with.
Mhm.
Because, mostly I try to keep, within my range, but without, within their range, without that, sorry. Out of their range. And I really like wrestling.
Okay. So you think so you like to say if you point in there, you think a lot about range. All right.
Yeah.
What else?
I try to outmaneuver my opponent and then thrust in areas that's not kind of new.
So what does it mean to outmaneuver your opponent?
Basically, if there's a park and bark kind of guy, they'll just kind of hang out here and wait for you. I'll basically move around them in order to get them to move over this way, just so I can come back over here and then stab.
Okay, and then stab. Okay, good, good. How many of you have competed or are planning on competing? Right. Okay, so about half, right? So let's think about context, because right now here's the context that most of us have as we're training longsword, right? Why they're training longsword? Because we think it's cool, it's a physical activity that appeals to our own personal sense of romance, or because in addition to that, we're interested in competing with it. Those are the two most common reasons that people pick something like this up, right? So if you're looking at competition, and by competition actually I want to extend out past tournaments, right? Tournaments are obviously competition, but just fencing in here with your buddies is also competition. If you're trying to win, it's a competition, right? The stakes are different, the rules are different a little, but still it's a competitive activity, right? So if you want to fence so that you can win a thing, whether that's bragging rights with your buddy or some personal sense of accomplishment or a shiny piece of plastic for your neck, whatever, there's some considerations that are going to come into your fencing that One is that it's okay to like get hit, right? Like it's not good to get hit, but it's okay because you're going to learn from getting hit, right? You're going to learn that this guy has that range, or you're going to learn that you have that, you leave that open, right? Or you're going to learn that that guy's not as immobile as you thought he was, right? You're going to learn something about yourself. You're going to learn something about your opponent. You're going to learn from getting hit. So it's okay to get hit, right? The other thing that you're going to do is you're going to be willing to experiment, right? You're going to try new things. You're going to try a new attack. You're going to say, I wonder if I can pull that off. And you're going to, hold my beer. You're going to try to you're going to try stuff that you maybe wouldn't try if it was a single blow and some part of your body was going to come off, right? You're going to approach that differently. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a thing that you should be cognizant of, right? You should be aware that that's a thing. So when we look at Lichtenauer's context, this is what we know about, or think we know about Lichtenauer, right? We think that Lichtenauer fought in the Hussite Wars. We think that the Society of Lichtenauer, his immediate students, were actually probably his company, his squad of guys, right? Lichtenauer, we're starting to think was probably some kind of squad leader, captain of a small company during the Hussite Wars. And that his society, when we say society, the word Gesellschaft, it also means just companionship and brotherhood. So it was frequently used for like small guilds. So it's possible, we don't know, but it's possible that was the case, and the guy was out fighting wars. It's also possible that the guy never fought a war in his life, we don't know. But what we do know is that his students, at a minimum, and the other people that were his students' contemporaries, were fighting with these things for life and death, right? Probably the best known of the guys who is not listed as one of his students, but was definitely contemporary and definitely quoted him was Hans Talhafer. So I must have mentioned Hans Talhafer before. We know quite a bit about Hans Talhafer. We have records of Hans Talhafer's students fencing in judicial duels. Specifically, we have one of these duels. We have one of these duels. I think it's the Königsberg manuscript. Actually is like a graphic novel, a play-by-play of that duel. So you see everything from the guy sitting up and praying and coming into the conf ring and the judicial ring, and like shaking hands or whatever the equivalent is, and then killing each other, right? But you see every single move. It's really interesting to see how that fight finally ends. And then the one guy praying because he was saved and not because to be alive. So we know that Talhafer did that. We also know that at Effectual in Switzerland, Effectual was like a competition workshop weekend. During this competition in Switzerland, some of Lichtenauer's students got in trouble and got thrown in jail for drunken brawling, and he had to go do something about that. So we know that this guy was teaching swordsmanship. We know he was traveling around the world. We have indications that he himself was a judicial champion, meaning that in those places where that was legal, he could take the place of the accused and fight himself, right? And we know that on at least one occasion, a very wealthy noble studied under him, fought for his life, and lived in a judicial combat scenario. This is just Talhafer I'm talking about, right? This is just Talhafer. So if we assume that Talhafer is a reasonable example of, if not what all of these society members were doing, certainly what all of them were trained to do and prepared to do, we start to get a sense of context, right? Does that like have to be that loud?
That's the owner.
Well, then I guess it does. Okay, so the things that Lichtenauer wrote and taught were meant for a sharp sword. They were meant for an engagement that you didn't want to be in for very long. So this idea of attack, parry, ching, 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 feint, ching, ching, parry, cut, right, is way too long for the fight to last. In a scenario when I've got a sharp sword, you've got a sharp sword, we're literally not allowed to leave the ring until one of us is dead. So let's just get that done. Right? Let's not stretch this out. Because the longer the fight goes, the better the chance that both of you die, or that both of you are injured and only one dies, or so on and so forth, right? The longer you're there, the worse it gets. So the idea of decisively finishing this engagement as quickly as possible becomes very, very important. So Lichtenauer's art is not about fighting the same guy for 3 minutes, nor is it about landing a single touch that might not debilitate the guy. It's about landing a blow or series of blows that's going to stop the guy cold as quickly as possible and then going home. Right? And that's with a sharp sword. Okay. So we don't have people who fight to the death with swords in any kind of organized fashion anymore, thankfully. Maybe not. don't know.
One day, Tristan and Josh.
It's getting there. It's getting there. But we do have folks nowadays who do fight for a living, right? We've got soldiers, we have fighter pilots, we have these kinds of folks. So there was this guy, this Air Force pilot many years ago named Boyd. He came up with something called the Boyd cycle or the OODA loop. Who's heard of that? Nobody? A couple of you? Two guys? Great. So that makes this easy. That makes this kind of fun. So let's talk about the OODA loop real fast. Pull this out a little bit. All right.
The drawing stuff.
The draw stuff. Okay. So let's talk about the OODA loop. O-O-D-A. OODA. Cool. All right. First is observe, orient, decide, and act. Okay. So the OODA loop is, again, this is a modern way of looking at the decision-making process. This has been extended into business decisions and all kinds of other stuff, but it was originally written by a fighter pilot to train fighter pilots to think about how fighter pilots work. And when I think about all the various things all the various sort of combative things that happen in the modern age, a dogfight is probably closer to a sword fight than almost any other kind of combat. Right? You're looking at two fencers, if you will, fairly equally matched, who are relying on skill and decision-making process in order to decisively put the other one down and then move on. Right? They're not going to be trading blows for a long time, so to speak. Okay. So this can be applied in lots and lots of places, but I really like applying it in terms of swordsmanship. And I think that Lichtenauer actually was applying it, and he had built his system around a framework exactly like this, even if he didn't describe it that way. Okay. So the first thing is observe, and we saw this in some of the examples that you gave on how you fight. Right? I look at my opponent and I observe what it is that I think he is. He's tall, he's strong, he's aggressive, he's fast, etc. I make some observation about him. Then I'm going to orient myself to those observations. I'm going to orient is really kind of interpreting. I'm going to interpret that observation to mean something. All right. Then, based on that, what I've oriented that to, I'm going to decide on a course of action. I'm going to pick a move, right? And then I'm going to act. I'm going to do the move, right? But this is a loop. Doing the move tests whether or not it's effective. If it is effective, purely effective the first time, oops, closed, you're done, go home, right? However, more often than not, that is not the case, right? You observe a situation, you orient yourself towards a situation, you decide on a course of action, you execute on that course of action, and then you don't get everything that you wanted out of the course of action. So all of this feeds back into observe, and then you run through it again. Your opponent is doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. The trick then, the guy who wins, is the guy who either finishes his loop first, or the guy who actually inserts his loop into the middle of the other guy's loop. He gets inside of his opponent's loop, right? Forcing the opponent to get hung up on some aspect of the loop and to fail to actually complete it, okay? So let's talk about a really, really general example, really broad example, right? I see my opponent, he is very aggressive, okay? I know that he's aggressive, right? I know that he's aggressive because of the way that he's standing, the way that he's moving, the way that he's breathing, and maybe because I've seen this guy before. That's orienting, all right? Now, because he's a very aggressive guy, I decide that I'm going to attack him, that I'm going to try to draw him in. Right? I'm going to draw him in. The way I'm going to draw him in is I'm going to jab my sword out at him. That's going to make him angry. He's going to run at me, and then I'm going to sidestep and chop his head. Okay? So I do that. I jab my sword at him, right? And he doesn't run at me. Now what? What just happened? He got in my loop. Right? He's like, oh, this guy thinks I'm aggressive. I can tell. He's shaking a little bit. Right? So I'm going to get really hyped up looking. I'm going to breathe a lot. I'm going to kind of do this. And then he's going to try to lure me in. And he's going to jab his sword out. He's going to do something to lure me in. And when he does that, I'm going to go like that. And he's going to go, oh, shit. And then I'm going to hit it. Right? Because as soon as you go, oh, shit, your OODA loop just got broken. Something just got inserted into that loop. Right? This is the kind of thing, does this happen to you guys as you fence?
Yeah.
Does this happen to you as you're just doing cutting drills in the mirror? Right? You're like, God, what did I just do? Right? Yeah, these things suddenly get inside of your loop. So you want to get into the other guys if you can, right? This is kind of how the OODA loop works, and what is that we're trying to do. So, now let's take a look, not at how you could use these things, but very specifically how Lichtenauer uses the OODA loop. All right? And I wanna have a quick chat about orthodoxy for a second. Orthodoxy. Right? What is orthodoxy? What's orthodoxy?
It's tradition.
It's tradition. It's the way it's done, right? So I am, when it comes to application of Lichtenauer's art, I am super orthodox, right? In my opinion, if you want to be a Lichtenauerian fencer, you should apply Lichtenauer's teachings as literally and consistently as possible.
Is that why your brother's here too?
That's why I'm doing a furry hat as soon as this gets out.
It looks lovely. It's coming really like.
Thank you for that. I'm trying to kind of like box it a little bit. Beards. Okay, so what I mean by that is the things that I'm going to tell you are rules. Now, like all rules, they can be broken by the artist, right? The job of the artist is to break the rules, and I think that applies to Lichtenauer rules as well. There are times when you choose to break the rules because breaking the rules accomplishes something that is appropriate. However, if you don't know the rules, you can't break them. You just run around without rules. Running around without rules might work for a number of geniuses who in reality intuited the rules and then figured out how to break them for their own purposes right away. That's what makes them geniuses. But for the rest of us, we apply the rules because the rules provide consistent results, because fencing is a science, and then they know just when to break it at just the right time, and that's the art piece. But first you have to learn the rules in order to break them. So we're going to learn the rules, and we're going to be really strict about the rules. I spent the last 5 years, maybe longer at this point, I made a conscious decision that I was going to fence by the rules exclusively. Even when I wanted to do something else, when there was advantage in doing something else, that I would not do that something else. I have not always lived up to that goal, but I held to it very, very closely. I learned a lot in that time, a lot. And I encourage anyone who wants to do this for a long time, who wants to really try to master the art, to actually try to master the art. In Lichtenauer's day and in the 300 years that followed, if you were a painter and you wanted to become a master painter, you'd go get a teacher like Rembrandt. And the very first thing that Rembrandt would have you do is copy his paintings exactly, brushstroke for brushstroke, so that your paintings were indistinguishable from his paintings, right? Because that was a way of conveying information in the early Renaissance, Lichtenauer's day, right? If we're talking, early to mid 1400s, I suspect that that's how Lichtenauer would want us to learn as well. Copy his brushstrokes, stroke by stroke, and only then do we learn how to interpret that into our own approach. Okay, so that's where I feel like I am. I am still very much a student of Lichtenauer, and unfortunately, because he's not here, I have to figure out how he made some of those brushstrokes work. Right? I know somehow he made that little swirly thing, but I can't figure out how. So I just keep on doing swirly things, and none of them are quite right. Eventually, I'll get it. Right? Okay. All right. So let's begin here. Let's begin. All right. The one of the things that I want to point out about the OODA loop is it's about efficiency. Okay. It's about the most efficient ways of making decisions. Lichtenauer's art is intentionally limited so that you can make the most efficient decisions the most quickly. If you have 16 different positions that you could stand in, how long does it take you to cycle through the right position? I don't know, let's say 16 units of something, right? 16 units, right? If you have 4 positions to choose from, how long does it take you to pick one? 4 units of something, right? Therefore, who's going to spend more processing power picking a position? 16. The 16 guy, right? So, if you only know 4 positions, you have 1/4 the amount of processing energy spent on positions. And you use that processing power for something else, right? If you only have 1 position, no processing time goes into that. It's awesome. You're also psychotically limited. So you got to find a balance, right? You got to find a balance. Okay, so we want to get to efficiency. I believe that Lichtenauer system is the most efficient of all of the various medieval sword fighting systems that I have seen. Okay, and I've seen probably all of them, at least all the ones that we have recorded. Okay, so let's start talking about our opponent. I can draw on there. That's okay. All right. So Lichtenauer divides the opponent. I guess that's kind of hard to see. Lichtenauer divides the opponent into 4 openings. Okay, how many of you heard this before? Right, many of you, most of you. Okay, 4 openings. Those openings are you draw a line right down the middle of the guy, and you draw a second line across his girdle, which think of as like about his belly button line. All right, think of those like those high pants. That's what they're talking about, right? Girdle. Okay, so you've got 4 openings. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. About 100, 200 years later, Joachim Meyer says, you might think this is silly to divide the opponent into only 4 openings, but let me tell you it's not. And then he divides the opponent into 4 more openings. Sure. So Meyer has 8 openings. But it's not silly. This is really important. 4, by the way, is a number that Lichtenauer really likes, and throughout the medieval period was just one of those numbers that people like. You had 4 directions, 4 seasons, 4 elements, 4 humors. 4 was kind of a magic number in medieval and early Renaissance societies. So part of that is why Lichtenauer may have chosen 4 openings. Also, it's just very simple. You have openings above, you have openings below, you have openings on the left, you have openings on the right. So when I'm fighting a person, I don't think, I'm going to stab him in the eye. You think, I'm going to stab him high and on the left or on the right. You're going to reduce all that processing power that you've spent thinking about individual targets, and you're just going to blend the whole thing out into up and down and left and right, and that's it. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Bang. Hit one of those. Which of those 4 is closest to me? Which of those 4 is uncovered? Right? So, our observation example is going to start with openings. Okay? So we're going to start by looking at our opponent and determining what is open. Okay? But we can do a little bit more with this. We can say what of our openings are open. He has 4 openings, I have 4 openings. I don't care what martial arts school he came from. Maybe he comes from some school that has 19 openings, and they're very strangely shaped, right? They're like the old maps on Soldier of Fortune, right? Where you shot a guy and died or whatever. Okay, maybe not. Getting old then. So you maybe got really complicated. Let's say you got one of those guys who grew up in a martial arts school where there's one of those maps on the wall, had all those pressure points everywhere, and lines pointed out of it everywhere. And so the guy's thinking, I'm going to cut him right in this exact spot on the tricep, and that's going to cause the muscle to roll up into his shoulder. And this sort of, he's thinking all this crazy stuff, right? All you're thinking is up left, right? And then you're thinking, my up left is open. His up left is open.
Lost his.
Oh, we haven't gotten that far yet. That's getting over to the side. You slow down now, right? Okay, so that's all I want you to think of, right? When you go into that engagement, I want you to think, what's open on me, what's open on him. Okay, that's easy. What's close, right? What's open. All right. Yes?
Is it possible to close an opening, or is that...
Absolutely, yeah. You can absolutely close an opening. And so let's play a little game, actually. Everybody grab your swords and stand up. All right. Okay, so spread out a little bit. There's enough room here. We're not going to be swinging around real wildly or anything, so there's enough room. I'm gonna take a position, all right? And you guys are going to tell me 2 pieces of information, all right? You're going to tell me what is most open and what is least open. All right? We got it? What is most open? Okay. Yeah. Maybe my bottom right. Okay, bottom right seems the most open, right? The weapon is furthest from there, right? What is least open? Top left. Okay, good. That's pretty easy. By the way, it's your left. All right.
I was going to ask about that. When we're talking about these, do we talk about them from our perspective or your perspective?
Unfortunately, they're not consistent about that even in the texts, right? Now, usually they'll say his right or his left. When they say there's 4 openings, the first opening is the upper right. They don't say if it's your right or his right. So I don't know. It doesn't really matter, to be honest, though. So for now, we'll go ahead and go from your perspective. That's fine, right? So right now, so what's the opening you least want to attack? This one, right? Because there's a sword there. All right. No point. What's the opening you want to most attack? Right. You would think the bottom right. Now, here's where we get into a problem, right? Everybody get into a position. Any position you want. Okay. Now, don't think about your position. Empty mind on your position. Think about my position. Which of your openings am I threatening most? I'm threatening your upper left. That's right, because of where my sword is, I am conveying the most threat to your upper left. So now, do you want to attack my lower right, even though it's the most open on my body? No. Which means that it is in fact not open. Right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You think it's open because there's nothing there. But then when you realize that this is a projection of force, right? And that force is projecting to an upper opening, you immediately think, if I attack low, I open both of my upper openings up completely, and the best I can hope for is that he limps home and I die. Right? So this is not acceptable. All right? So that's what I mean when I talk about openings, right? Now, everybody, find a buddy. Find a buddy real quick.
In the camera's way.
All right. Okay, good. You don't need a lot of space for this. We're not going to be swinging our swords or doing anything like kinetic here, okay? Now, find a buddy. Both of you take a guard towards each other, right? Like you're fencing each other. Take a guard. All right? Now, observing your opponent, right? I just want you to think. You don't need to say it out loud, right? Just think. Where is my buddy currently least open? That's the easiest question to answer, all right? Everybody see where that is? All right. Tell your buddy where it is. Okay, all right, good. Now I hear something you're already talking about what's open, right? So what's open? Right on your buddy. Okay? Now, when you say what's open, you have to ask yourself, where am I open? What are they threatening? All right? So now you have to start orienting yourself to the situation, right? Now you're starting to creep into that decision-making process. Because just observing my opponent is in right Phong Tag has to be interpreted, right? So now you're going to say, all right, he's in right Phong Tag, I'm in left Ox. All right, so now, in fact, let's do that. One of you go into Phong Tag, one of you go to Ox on your left side. Let's see if we can do that, if we can figure that out. All right, good. Phong Tag is the guard up at the shoulder, right? And Ox is that like guard where you're pointing to the guy's face from above. Okay, good. Now, so if you're the guy in Phong Tag, and this is gender neutral guy, right? If you're the guy in Phong Tag, all right, is your opponent open on the area that you are most comfortable striking to right now? No, right? Their sword is hanging in their upper left opening, which is the opening that you threaten with your upper right guard. Okay? So, clearly you cannot pick the one before, right? Okay. So you can't attack that opening, all right? So now which opening is most open? Well, what's closest? What's closest? Right side or left side?
The closest leg.
It's the closest leg, right? So, whatever that side is, right? So, if you're the guy in Phong Tag, right, your opponent is in left Ox, which means his right leg is closest to you, all right? However, if you attack that leg, what happens? You get stabbed in the face. We have a problem. All right, we have a problem. Okay. So, keep it up, come on. You're gonna get a little bit of exercise tonight, come on. Right? It's gonna be like yoga. You're just gonna do nothing and shake and sweat. Right? That's a compliment. That's a compliment to yoga. You do nothing and you shake and sweat horribly, right? Because you're doing nothing like this. Right? Okay.
What yoga are you taking, Jamie?
I don't know, yoga traumatized me. I stay away from it. All right. Okay, good. All right. Now, so what are you going to do? You have to be able to attack an opening, right? You have to be able to attack an opening. Let's think about the other guy. So you're the guy that's up in Ox right now. You're up in Ox. All right? Stay in Ox. Those of you who are in Ox, don't come down. Check it out on me. All right. So you're up in Ox. Which of your opponent's openings is most open? Yeah, your right, his left, right? Yeah, your right, his left is most open. This is the side that's closest, right? Okay. High or low? High. Why high?
Because it closes off their line of attack.
It closes off the line of attack, but also, even more obviously, it's closer to your sword, right? If I'm fighting a guy like this, that's more open than his shoulder, right? But if I'm fighting a guy like this is more open. Because I'm talking about 12 inches to hit it, right? Very, very short distance, okay? Now, Justin's right. We're going to start getting into this idea of closing off the line of attack and doing some of this these sort of geometric permutations. But right now, what I want you to just think of, what is my weapon closest to being able to hit, right? What is his weapon closest to being able to hit? Okay? That's the first piece of information that you need to observe, all right? Okay, relax, shake it out. Okay, so this is where we get into openings, all right? Now, we're going to orient, right, by observing and comparing the four-legger. And legger just means, for tonight's purposes, guard, right? The four guards. So this is important. How many guards are there? Four. All right. That's true and it's not. I'll show you what I mean, right? The 4 guards, and look in our school, pay attention if this is new to you, right? Are vom Tag, which is like this, or like this. They are Ox, which is like this, or like this. Flug, the plow, which is like this, or like this. And Alber, which is like this, or this, or this. Right? It's going to have this space down here. Okay? So those are the 4 guards. But then in Lichtenauer's own writings, he tells you about this guard, Long Point, and its French Breckfenster. And he tells you about a guard called Schrankut, which goes on both sides. So at a minimum, we have 6 guards, right? No, there are 4 guards. And this is the kind of cognitive dissonance I want you to embrace. Okay? I want you to embrace this. And this is where this is useful. All right? When I see my opponent, right? When I see my opponent, I want to reduce the possible observations I make about him as much as possible. So when I see my opponent, I don't want to see 16 guards. If I have an opponent who is standing at me like this, right? This is a guard, right? Called Schlüssel, the key, right? My opponent's standing at me like this, and I've never seen that before. I don't want that to break my loop right here. That's a bad place for the loop to break. Okay? They're all bad places. That's a bad place, right? What the? You don't want that, right? If you ever go fence a florist, right? A florist. A guy who studies Fiore di Liberia, right? If you ever go to fence, these Italian longsword fencers, and you go in like this in Schrankut, even though they all know that there's a thing called Schrankut and that it's weird looking, they go. They don't know what it's going to do because they're just not. It's not in their system, right? Likewise, they have a guard like this, half iron door, right, which does some things in a way that we wouldn't do in this Germanic fencer. And half iron door can really mess a German fencer up because he doesn't know how to orient against it, right? He can observe it. It's low. It's off to the side. I've observed it. But he can't orient to it. I don't know what it does. Right? Does it stab? Does it cut? Does it parry? Does it fly away? I don't know. Right? So this becomes very important that you have a way that you can describe what your opponent is doing without knowing anything about what your opponent is doing. Okay? And this is what the 4-legger do for us. This is why we have only 4 guards and not 6. Okay? Because I want 4 things that I can make a decision about really, really fast, right? Is his point up, right? Is he threatening a cut or a thrust? Is his blade high or is it low? Really simple. Vom Tag and Ox. Flug and Alber. Okay? If I can determine just those things, I can very rapidly orient myself to the problem. Okay? Because I know what those 4 things do. So if I see a guy like this, what position is he in?
Alber.
He's in Alber. What if he's like this?
Alber.
What if he's like this? Right. Okay? What if he's like this? Or like this? Or like this? Or like this? Okay. What if he's like... This is a tough one. What if he's like this? Vom Tag. Why is this Vom Tag? Points up. He's threatening a cut. He's not threatening a thrust of this. Right? Okay. What if he's like this? Yeah, how is that? I mean, it's not different, right? But if he's maybe up like this? The plow, maybe Ox, right? You can pick. Just pick it. Right? Just as quickly as you can. Okay? All right? What if he's like this? Oh, we know that this is long point, right? We know that this is long point, but is this plow or is this Ox? It could be it, right? But here's the thing, just decide which one it is to go. You'll find, as you get deeper into this, that the things that break Ox and the things that break plow both break long point. Okay? You'll find that when we get into this position right here, right? What's this? Alber, right? Okay, so the things that break Albert will break this. Okay? What else is this? It's what? Trunk. Well, it's trunk hood, but if it's only one of the 4 guards, if it's only 4 guards, what's the other guard that it could be? Yeah. Yeah, it's threatening a cut from above.
Short edge.
Right? Yeah, short edge, long edge. Doesn't even matter, right? Flat, whatever, right? To hit me, it's gonna come like this. So it's gonna pass through that upper cutting space, right? So I could treat it like foam tug, okay? I just need to pick one, okay? And in a lot of cases, the one that you pick is gonna be based on your height versus his height and a couple of other things. So you start getting a sense. If that point is high in my face, it's us. I'm not so much worried if it's high because he's tall, right? Like if who here is vertically challenged? Vertically challenged fencer?
Really? Okay, you are, right?
Do you know who Ben Floyd is? Ben Floyd is a crazy tall fencer. I think he's like 19 feet tall. I know this because I threw an overhow at him once, and he went to the ground and we had to pause the match for 3 minutes because I hit him in the nuts. He's crazy tall. He's very good too. He's a very good fencer. He's crazy tall, right? If Ben Floyd, if you're a short guy and you're fencing Ben Floyd and he's in Flug, guys, he's an ox. Right? All right? So think about that, right? Because it's not just your opponent's openings that matter, it's your openings. But that place where your openings and his openings combine, that's orient. Right? That's orient. So the first thing we do is we figure out what position he's in, where he's open, right? Then we orient by saying, what guard is he in? What guard am I in? Right? Actually, check this out. You can actually kind of ignore the guard that you're in. Like, you kind of need to know the guard you're in, but it's like the least important piece of the equation. Okay? The most important piece of the equation is what guard he's in. Okay? The guard that you're in tells you what he's probably going to do against you, right? So it's useful information. But when we get into the 5 words and going before, if you do your thing first, it doesn't matter what he was playing, right? The last thing you want him to do is do what he wanted to do, right? So we got 4 openings. Now we have 4 guards. All right. Against the 4 guards, we're going to pick one of 4 Versetzen, which in this particular case are a kind of strike. All right. And they marry up. Each of the 4 guards has a strike which counters it. So now I observe what's open. I observe what guard he's in. That guard translates to information that I orient myself to in the way that I am positioned and prepared. Then I decide that I'm going to throw the appropriate counter cut to his position, right? And the act is throwing the cut, right? And then allowing the loop to reinitiate when the cut lands or not. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so this is pretty important stuff. All right, so we're gonna play a quick game. Raise your hand if you know what the 4 Versetzen are. Like you know them by name and you can do it.
They don't know that term. They know the strikes.
The 4 strikes. All right, raise your hand if you know what Schielhau, Zwerchhau, Krumpau, and Scheilhau are for. Okay, a couple more, right? Okay, so if you're in that group, when we break up, you're gonna go out on the deck. Okay, you're gonna go on the deck when we break up. All right. So here's the game. For those of you guys who know what those techniques are, all right? We're going to do a really, really simple version of a game that I call 7-Up. We're going to strip a couple pieces out, which is why it won't make any sense being called 7-Up, because we're not doing 7 things, all right? We're only going to do 4 things, all right? 5 things, actually. Those 4 things are, let's see, Ben and I are partners. Ben is going to stand in a guard, any guard, right? Any guard. Any guard. He can pull stuff out of Meyer, Marozzo, I don't care, right? He's probably going to just do stuff out of Lichtenauer because, you know, that's what he knows. But he's going to pick a guard. I am then going to see that guard. I observe. He's in a foam tag. I'm going to orient myself to the guard, right? Foam tag is broken by Zwerchhau. So I'm going to decide to do a Zwerchhau, all right? Then I'm going to act, and I'm going to throw a Zwerchhau. Boom, Zwerchhau lands, okay? I lean back from my cut. I reset. I pick a beginning position. Hint, make this your beginning position every time. It's easier if you do, all right? I reset to my beginning position. He changes his guard. It's important that he wait until I reset and change his guard. I'll explain why in a second. He changes guard. He's an Albert. Albur is broken by Shadowhow. I observe, I orient, I decide, I act. Okay? And I throw that Shadowhow at his head. Alright? Then I recover. He picks a new movement. Alright, or a new position. He's in Flug. But he's in Flug on the wrong side. What am I gonna do? I don't have time. I'm not gonna let that get in my loop. I'm just gonna go. And I throw Shieldhow against it, right? Even though it's actually the suboptimal side to throw Shieldhow. Probably working. Right? That's the drill. The reason I want him to wait to transition his positions until after I have reset is I want him to give me the least amount of time possible to decide. If like we just did this, right, and I go, Crumpile gets his hands, and while I'm transitioning, he transitions, I have all that extra time to make that decision, right? So instead, I'm gonna make the thing, I'm gonna reset, he's gonna move, and as fast as possible, I'm gonna leap into the movement, okay, into the correct movement, all right? So if you know those movements and what they answer to, this is an easy game, run out and go do that, okay? So you guys run out onto the deck and start doing that. Everybody else, stay with me.
Gloves and mask.
Masks and gloves are a good idea. It's your own intensity level.
You only need the massive gloves for first and being attacked.
That's right. Okay, all right, the rest of you guys. All right, we're gonna kind of do a short version on all these strikes. Each one of these strikes is lots of time. Okay, lots of time. But we're gonna talk about them in very, very simple ways. Okay. Raise your hand if you've done the 120 plus 80 in this class, right? Probably pretty much everybody. All right, kind of the cutting exercise, and you cut a whole bunch, right? Most of these cuts, well, one of the cuts at least, are contained in that exercise. All right. So it works like this. Let's see, Ben, stay up. There's 4 things you're going to pick from. All right. If your opponent has a sword in Foam Tog, which is to say it's high and looking to cut. All right. If the sword is high and looking to cut, you're going to take your sword. You're going to turn it sideways. You're going to put your thumb on the flat, makes it more comfortable. Right. You're going to lift it over your head like this. And then you're going to jump at it. All right? In the process of jumping at him, you're going to turn like a corkscrew, or just like a top or something. You're going to turn and twist, right? So you're going to leap, twist, boom, and you're going to hit him at about eye level. Okay? At about eye level. Now, if you're a lot taller than your opponent, getting down low enough so to keep the sword over your head is hard, and I can show you some alternate ways of doing that. But for now, the easiest thing to do is just drop your butt, right? Just, that's fine. Okay, go in there, keep the sword here-ish, right over your head. That's the cut. Okay, against Foam Tog. All right, and just for purposes of demonstration, this is why this works. I do this, and he cuts down at me. It hits anywhere. Okay, that's why we do that. All right. Now, if he is in Ox, all right, and I want the Ox to be on this side every time, for purposes of you guys' demonstration, you're gonna do a thing called the crooked cut, the crew towel. I'm gonna. It's weird. All right.
Hey, check it out. Yeah, you show me.
Like an adult now. All right. Sure. So, thanks. It's still on. So with this same thing, you're gonna take that same big leap, right? You're gonna move out of the way of the sword, pretty easy, and then you're gonna strike him in the hands over the top, and you're gonna do it like this. Okay? So not like this, but like this. Does that make sense? Everybody try that. Hold your sword out. Right? Everybody kind of cut normal. All right? Cut normal. Now take that back hand and push it under the other hand. Okay? That's the 12-second lesson on a front cut.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's it. All right. Yep. Back hand. If you're right-handed, you push your left hand under your right, and then there you go. And the sword kind of chops like this weird diagonal angle. Crump means crooked or bent. It's the same where we get crimp, like to crimp your hair. Same idea, like a crimping pliers, that kind of thing. It makes a sudden kink or bend in the thing. So the Crumpile is the bent cut, right? Because it's bent on a weird line. Okay. So we're going to use the Zwerg, which is like the helicopter cut against Foam Tog. We're going to use the crimping iron cut, all right, against the guy who's up in Ox. By the way, see how this solves the problem of Ox we were having before? You're here, he's here. If I attack the leg, he stabs me in the face. Attacking this shoulder is really tough, right? Attacking there is stupid, it doesn't work. So what am I going to do? I'm going to bend my sword around his defense. Boom, just like that. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so that's the crooked cut. The next two are either really easy or really hard, depending on how you look at it. Against the guy in plow, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna put my thumb on my flat, just like when I'm doing the helicopter cut. I'm gonna hit him with the back edge of my sword with a cut that goes straight down to this shoulder. All right, to this shoulder. And I'm gonna cross the point of the sword as I do it. Like that. Okay? Really short version, the reason why I do that and not this, a regular cut, is if I do a regular cut and he stabs at me, that happens, right? But if I do this and he stabs at me, doesn't anyway. Okay? All right, the last cut is actually the easiest. He's down an elbow. I just take a vertical cut straight at his head. And that's it. Okay? All right, so that was a lot of information to absorb in just a couple seconds. So grab a partner, start working through these. I expect you to get stumped. That's okay. Ben and I are going to come back into it. All right. So 10 minutes is not enough time to learn the fear perception, right? If you're brand new to it. But hopefully you're starting to get some sense of these things. You get some sense of the drill or thing that you can do to train, not the moves themselves, but the decision-making process around the move, right? There's two different activities here. One is learning the move correctly. And while I made a couple of spot corrections here and there, for the most part, if the move that you were doing was roughly recognizable as the thing, I let it go. Because we're talking about decision-making process right now, not the actual movement itself. The actual movement itself, I can get very pedantic about, very precise about, because those little tiny details make a huge difference in application. But there's the decision making, training your mind to do the move, and there's technique training, which is training your body to do the move correctly when your mind calls upon it, right? And I'm focusing right now on decision making. All right. Okay, so now we're gonna come out of this for a second, and we're gonna move on to kind of the next phase. So this is a single example of that OODA loop idea happening in Lincoln Hour. But to be honest, it's actually more than an example. If your opponent is just standing there, if your opponent is a castle, right? If he is, and one of the translations for leger or guard is a siege, right? If your opponent is in a guard and isn't coming out of that guard, that's a problem that you have to deal with. So the only correct way, before you learn to break the rules, the only correct way to fence a guy standing in a guard is one of these four cuts, hard stop, period, don't think about anything else. Meaning that when you go in to start a fight, if you're gonna strike first and the other guy is going to wait for you to strike, there are only four strikes that you are conceivably going to throw. You're gonna throw them from your strong side, period. That's it. It's really simple. Your OODA loop is shorter than theirs, right? But if he knows that, then he'll know, I don't care if he knows what you're gonna do, it's gonna come in really hard, right? And those techniques, as many of you are beginning to discover, or those of you who've been doing them for a while know, are designed specifically so that they are relatively safe ways to attack, and that they force your opponent to do one of two things: get hit or defend himself, right? Your opponent must get hit or defend himself. That's it. And one of the things that we're talking about Lincoln Hour's approach to the fight, he doesn't want you to defend yourself. What? Okay, that doesn't mean he doesn't want you to parry when it's the difference between you dying and not dying. Okay? What it means is he doesn't want you to get to the point where you're making that decision. Because if you enter into that point in time when you're thinking about parrying, guess what you're doing? You're reacting. You are fully inside, you're inside of the other guy's OODA loop in a bad way, right? You are riding his train. He is determining what you do next, which means you can never get out of that and reverse it so that you're on the offensive, okay? You cannot, to use a football analogy, you can't score when you're on defense. Never mind safety. So, which is basically indent. So, so when you're fighting a guy, right, if you are parrying, things are going better. Okay, be aware. If you're parrying, things are going better. According to the way that Lincoln Hour wants you to approach the fight. Okay. So, what does that mean? Should we stand there and wait for our opponent to attack ever? nope, we shouldn't. Right? Lichtenauer says you should not do that, but that is bad. Okay? Can you win like that? Yep. Right, you can. Right? I'm not saying that you can't do any of these things. I'm saying that Lichtenauer is saying that you shouldn't. Okay? Because his way is bad. So, you walk in, you see another guy, he takes a position, he takes one tag, before he's even thought, I'm going to go and tag, you chop his head in half to the Zwerchhau. Because you didn't have to think about it. Because you practiced seeing a guy go into Von Tag and blasting into his face with a Zwerchhau so many times that you didn't have to think about it. It just happened like magically. When I am at a competition, and I don't know who it is I'm going to be, I don't know the fighter that I'm going to fight next, like when I travel abroad or across the country, I try to watch at least one match with the guy who's going to fight next. Like if you're in elimination bouts, for example, and I know that the winner of the next batch is the next guy that I'm going to fight, I try to watch both fighters. And I only observe one thing only about those two fighters. What is that fighter's happy place? Okay? By happy place, I mean the guard that they will always return to eventually. The guard that they just like. The happy place is always Von Tag or Long Point. Always. Everybody's happy place is this or some variation of this, without exception. Like all of them. Most of them, it's either here or here, right? So what I do is, I identify the happy place, and then I close my eyes, and I imagine that fencer, or just any fencer wearing a mask, whatever. I imagine that fencer going into their happy place. And then BAM! Right? I imagine that Schielhau or that Zwerchhau coming in so hard that the mask crumples and their teeth go around the inside rim of the mask. And then I see it again, and again, and again, and I just see it happen over and over again, right? I see that fencer go. I run it over and over and over and over again in my head, right? I don't care if that fencer knows, and by now everybody knows that if you fight Jake and you stand like this, he's gonna do a Schielhau. Everybody knows that now. I don't give a shit, right? Let him know it. Let him get scared thinking about it, right? Because it's gonna work. And if it doesn't work, I'm in a bind. I like being in a bind. That's good for me, right? So there you go. I hit him, or I'm gonna think that I'm gonna do, right? Exception. If that guy is Eric Wiggins, he will totally do a better Schielhau than Rat bastard. All right. Dude got my OODA loop hard. Right? All right, so. But that's how I want you thinking about this stuff, right? That's what happens. You want to tighten that down as tight as you can. All right. Now what happens when the fight is on, right? Now you've thrown that first cut, and because your opponent is not an image in your head that will allow you to crumple the mask, they are instead an actual human who reacted to the thing that you did and managed to prevent the thing that you wanted to do from working as well as you wanted it to work. All right? Now you are fighting, right? So, there are 5 words that Lichtenauer uses to describe his art. That this is the whole art, right? All right, it's German. Yay. All right, vor means before. Nach means after. Stark means strong, like Tony Stark. Right? Schwach means weak. Okay, Indes means some stuff. We'll talk about it. All right, it's complicated. All right, vor, nach, stark, schwach, Indes. Whole art. Okay, so now, this is the broader way to evaluate everything. Okay, the broader way to evaluate everything. For is before. What comes before? The first thing. If you guys are D&D players, it's your initiative roll. Okay. It's the thing that has its position in time relative to another thing, and you're in front of that other thing. Okay. It's another thing. I'll be a little bit all right. So. How do we use this when we fight? Okay. You're going to talk a lot. Say what? Yeah. You're going to talk a lot? Yeah, I'm going to talk a lot. I'm trying you on for a while. I'm going to shave next too. Yeah.
Eat bananas.
All right. Okay. So four is the before, and what that means, this is really simple, right? Me and Scott are fencing, and Scott wants to punch me, and I want to punch Scott, so I punch Scott. That's before. Okay. Got it? Okay. Nach is after. Me and Scott want to fight each other. We both want to punch each other. I punch Scott. Scott is after. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, Scott might go wax off, right? And I have failed to punch Scott, but he's still in the after because he reacted to what I did. Okay? He is in my time zone. All right? So, he knocks that aside, and I punch him in the face with the other fist. I'm still in the before. He goes with the other hand. He's still in the after. Okay? Before doesn't mean that it lands, it just means that I went first. Right? Knock doesn't mean that you got hit, it just means that you're reacting to what the other guy does. So therefore, if I'm standing in a guard, waiting for my opponent to attack, am I before or after? What if he hasn't attacked yet? Am I still in the after? Yeah, I've mentally put myself in the after. I've decided that I'm going to go second. Right? Does Luke Denauer want you to decide that you go second? No, he doesn't. Right? Does he acknowledge that sometimes you go second? Yes, he does. But that wasn't what you meant to do. That just happened because he was faster than you, or because your OODA loop was stuck on observe, 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 orient, 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 orient. Okay, so that's what for and knock are. There's another way that we can use knock too. I can have my own knock, right? I can punch Scott, and he goes to block, and that second fist is already coming up to him in the face. In which case, I am both before and after, right? Kind of like his calves, and Alpha and Omega, right? Boom, boom. Okay. This happens with a sword too. There's a German guy, Jens Peter Kleinau, who I think is legitimately insane. But like most insane people, he has some really genius ideas, and his commentary on before and after are really interesting. Ben, come here. All right, see here. Find the steel sword. All right, so Vorschlag, meaning the first hit, and Nachschlag, meaning the after hit, or the second hit, was a term that also applied to blacksmithing in the time period. And it works like this. If I'm just a blacksmith all by myself, I'm tapping away on a piece of metal with my hammer. All right, you ever heard this? Vorschlag and Nachschlag. The before strike and the after strike. 2 strikes, the before and the after, right? Also, sometimes 2 apprentices would work on one piece of metal at the same time. So I hit, he hits. Vorschlag, Nachschlag. All right. So, you thought, yeah, all right. Now, what happens when I combine these 2 ideas? Get back to the rhythm, right? Okay. I got it. Right? All right, good, thanks. All right. So the idea is I strike, and my second strike is preloaded. I know exactly what I'm doing next. All right? So that act phase already has a second decision loaded up in it. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. Like that, right? I break up the rhythm a little bit.
So it's
right?
kind of like that, the concept that Bruce Lee and Ali were talking about, where you're hitting in the offbeat.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look, like even if you get into like rapier fencing, right? Parry riposte, you parry his blow, and as he's retreating, that's when you issue the riposte, right? You don't go parry riposte. You go parry, feel, and leave, and then hit him then, right? Similar kind of idea, but with us, you're going to throw a strike and it hits his sword. You're not going to wait for him to do something. You're going to immediately go like that and hit him underneath anyway. You're going to jump in the middle of that rhythm. Okay, so think about that with before and knock. It's before and after, right? Okay, Stark and Schwack. Stark and Schwack is really simple. This is mechanics. So the first 2 are time. The second 2 are leverage. Okay, so when we talk about strong and weak, we're talking about leverage. This is different from hard and soft, which is pressure. Okay, we'll talk about hard and soft in a second. All right. So strong is this part of the sword. Everything from the middle to the hilt is the strong. The weak is everything from the middle to the point. Okay. This is true in open hand as well, right? This would be the weak, right? This, or closer to the root, would be the strong, right? Depending on kind of what you have and what your weapon is, okay? If I were to do half sword, if you guys are familiar with half sword, and grab my sword right here, this is all strong, probably to about here, and then it starts to get weak. Okay, it starts to get weak. Or in truth, given the length of this weapon, now everything is strong. Right? Which is pretty cool. This is part of why half really works. Except your fingers. Your fingers are not strong, you can totally break. So, okay, so that's really important because now this starts getting into how we view every sort of situation and how we orient it, right? Orientation is how you view things. It's your perception of things, not just your observation is what you see. Orientation is how you perceive it, how you interpret it, right? So this gets into how you interpret and deal with the input, the data. So let's start combining these things. If we combine, let's say that my sword is currently strong in leverage, and I have the Vor, what's going to happen to my opponent? He's going to die, right? He's going to get 3 feet of steel in his nostril. Okay, awesome. If I have the strong, but I'm in the knock, what has probably just happened? A parry. That's exactly right. He swung at me, and I went and caught it on the strong of the sword. Okay? Which incidentally gives me the power to reverse for a knock, because I'm in a strong, stable position. It's like this. Okay? So, Ben and I swing swords at each other at the same time. Swing really slow. Okay, we went strong to strong. We're both strong. Okay? I might have been 4 before, but now we're so evenly matched it doesn't matter. I don't know how this is going to resolve. Let's compare this to this, right? Same strike. I had the Vor. I have the strong. He has the weak. What's going to happen to Ben?
Dead.
He's dead. He's going to get hit. Correct? He's toast, right? Ben strikes at me. I parry because I was asleep at the wheel. I'm in the knock, right? Crap. So I parry. I'm strong. He's weak. Good for me. But there's no threat there, right? So now I have to wind and try to take it. I have to flip my relationship so that I'm not after, but so that he's after. And this is where we get into index and feeling. All right, we'll come back to that. Now, what about, Ben, stay here. What if I am after and I am weak? What happens? You're dead. That's actually exactly right. Okay. For example, cut an Oberhau. Toast. Right? And by the way, there are guys who cut like this. They call it Tyrannosaurus arm. Right? They cut like this. Right? So I'm like, he cuts me, I'm going to parry. I'm toast. Right? So you'll find fencers, longsword fencers, who say, you should cut from Tag to plow. Okay? Let's try that. He's going to cut, he's going to reach out long like you should. I'm going to cut from Tag to plow. I was in the knock. I struck my weak. I'm dead. Okay? All right. Now, that works fine. Don't move. If I'm in the 4, right, I strike with my weak. Okay, well, it's not as good as it could be, but you know, not too bad, right? These are the kinds of things you're going to use to start perceiving what's going on in the fight. Okay? You'll get into scenarios where Lichtenauer says, if you perceive that your opponent is fencing short, do a thing. Right? This is kind of what he's talking about. All right? Okay. All right, now, I want to talk real fast about this idea right here, indes. Indes is Lichtenauer speak for the Ula. Okay? So, indes right here is tightly connected to an idea called fühlen, right? Which means feeling. Fühlen, which means feeling. And it works like this. It doesn't mean, if you come into a dark room, let's say that this is the door and this is the wall, right? What's the first thing you do when you come into a dark room? And you flip the light, right? You don't do this. Light. Come on, it's here. Where is it? Right? You don't do that, okay? Why is it then that longsword fencers feel, right, like this? We'll come into Long Point, which is like the feeling guard. There's an old translation of Sprechfenster, which is another name for Long Point. Sprechfenster means the speaking window. It's the German word for that little window in the castle door. Like, shh, that's the password. Right? Also the little window in a confessional between the priest and a confessor. Or the confessor and the confessing person? The sinner, right? So that's a Sprechfenster, okay? So Lichtenauer calls this Sprechfenster, right? The speaking window. And it's kind of like, you know, he comes to fence me, he has to, you know, give me the password, right? Now, You'll see fencers, and I used to be one of them, that will feel like this. I'm just waiting for him to do something, right? If I'm waiting for him to do something, what am I? I'm probably dead. Wittgenstein says, I have less joy in my heart. Right? I'm in the knot, right? So, contrast that to this, right? Think about the light switch. Right? I'm actively probing, feeling. I'm groping. Right? Right? So when you think of feeling, when you think of feeling, don't think of like, right? It's like, force, right? Okay, so I want you to think about that because this is really important. This becomes the thing that you have to do every time your sword touches the other guy's sword. Okay? And then one of the things that we learn next is that Lindenauer says, when you must fence to the 4 openings, right? We talked about 4 openings. You must attack the 4 openings. How do you attack the 4 openings? There are only 2 ways to attack the 4 openings. Not counting those openers for an opponent who won't move, which we just learned, right? So now we have an opponent who's moving a lot, okay? He's active, he's busy, right? So even if our swords aren't touching, right? He's moving around, he's going from guard to guard, right? Maybe he's cutting a lot, right? You know, he's thrusting and jabbing, he's really active, okay? There's only 2 ways to hit that guy, okay? One is called nachreisen and ansetzen. Nachreisen means traveling after, or going after, or chasing. It just means this, right? Ben cuts at me, got a huge opening, right? That's nachreisen. It's attacking into an opening caused by movement, all right? This is ansetzen. All right, so nachreisen is cutting into an opening caused by movement. Ansetzen is thrusting into an opening caused by movement. All right, so that's one way. Ansetzen, nachreisen, they're buddies, right? That's one way to attack the openings. The other way is if the swords are touching, you use the 8 windings and then the appropriate killing technique. Okay, we'll get to that a little bit more later, right? But essentially, the 8 windings are different ways you twist your sword to create an opening. All right? Yes.
Wouldn't nachreisen be considered knock?
Yeah, it is.
And he says not to.
He says not to wait, but he doesn't say that you will never find yourself in the knock, right? What he says is the only way to fence to the 4 openings, right? The 2 drivings with which you fence the 4 openings are nachreisen, ansetzen, and winding, right? That's it. So once the fight is on, there's only 2 ways you're going to hit the guy. So don't think about all these other ways you could hit the guy. Stop it. Yes, technically they exist. Who cares? Don't do them. Okay? Limit yourself intentionally for power, right? It's good for you. Read in your minutes. All right. Okay, let's see here. So, and then I want to talk about these things conceptually just a little bit, and then we've got another activity. All right. Conceptually, while obviously Stark and Schweck and Voronach apply to the sword and to thing actions on the sword, there's also something that comes out of Indes. All right. And this is hard and soft. Okay. Hard and soft. All right. Hard and soft are pressure. So these are leverage. These are leverage. These here are pressure. It's really hard to write sideways. Pressure. Okay? Hard and soft are pressure. So, the most obvious, Ben, right? So the most obvious explanation of that is something like this, right? Our swords are here. We're bound. I do this groping, feeling thing, right? And his sword is giving way. Is he hard or soft? Soft. Soft, okay? Ultimately, I'm doing this. Is he hard or soft? Hard, right? This is really simple. People try to make hard and soft really complicated. Like, are his elbows bent or are they not bent? Is he far? Is he strong in the sword or is he weak in the sword? Is he focusing his chi or not? I don't know. It's really simple, right? If you push it and it moves, it's soft. Soft. All right? Hard. Okay? If you push it, it moves. If it makes that sound, it's hard. If it's like, it's soft. Okay? Really, really simple. All right? So, same thing happens with swords. So, if I'm here and we're fighting and I go, and I feel, he's soft. Right? I can feel it. And once I know if he's hard or soft, I have oriented, I decide on the correct technique, which has been pre-assigned for hard versus soft, and I execute. So I have a very simple decision tree, right? Which of the 4 guards is he in? Use that opener. It succeeded, he's dead, yay, right? It failed. The swords connect. Is he hard or is he soft? Right? He's soft. Use that move. Stab him. Is he dead? Yes. Yay. No. Is he hard or is he soft? Right? And continue down those trees. You see how that works? It's really simple. You want to keep the number of decisions that you have to make as small as possible. That means training them a lot to build what we tend to call muscle memory, but neural pathways, right? But if you create too many neural pathways, you get confused. It's hard to decide. So you create a small number that very specifically train neural pathways, and they fire off faster than the other guy. Because he's going through the 14 plays of the thing, right? Whereas you just got, I got 4 things. I'm gonna do that one. It splits into 2 things. I'm gonna do that one. Splits into 2 things. I'm gonna do that. All right. Okay, so now this also applies, though. This also applies in a slightly more metaphoric way, right? So come back here. All right. Some fencers, before you ever connect swords, are simply hard or soft. You can tell, right? A fencer who, like Ben, take a guard. Like we're fencing, right? Okay. Is Ben hard or soft right now? He's actually kind of a great example. Is he hard or soft right now?
Soft.
Hard. This is good, right? Ben has obfuscated whether he is hard or soft. Therefore, he's already in my group. And seriously, that's actually one of the things that makes Ben really hard to throw, by the way. If you ever try to throw Ben, all right? Maybe Jim can do it, but I've tried for years to throw and I fail every time, right? Okay. Ben is stable. That leg's bent. He's ready to go. His shoulders are broad. His hips are kind of square. But he's also kind of pliable. I see a little bounce in his step, right? His fingers aren't squeezing too hard. He can be hard or soft immediately, right? Which is great. Be like a hard fencer now, so you can kind of do that, right? There you go. Okay, it's subtle, but you guys see the difference?
Yeah.
He just went hard, right? He tightened his fingers. He steadied his shoulders. More of his weight went into his feet, right? If I ran into this guy, he would probably not move very much. Okay. On the flip side, is he going to be able to come at me really quickly? No. Probably not. Here's another way that you can be hard, right? Here's another way that you can be hard. Some fencers fence as if they're coming out of the chalks, right? Like they're done like chalk blocks, and they just explode towards you. As soon as that fencer has exploded, he can no longer change direction, which means he is hard, right? So he fences like he's hard. In contrast, you'll have some fencers who are just naturally very soft. They're very fluid, right? They can kind of bob around, and you swing the sword at these guys, and they just cease to be there. They just void out of the way, right? Right? They might not even be in guard. They just don't even care. They're soft, right? Both hard and soft have advantages and disadvantages. It's important to know what your opponent is, okay? Likewise, in terms of leverage, you can evaluate if your opponent is strong or weak. This is what I mean. Okay. All right. Go into like having time, right? Okay. All other things being equal, which one of us is likely to have a better position of leverage if both of our swords move at the same time? Ben. Probably Ben. So is he strong or weak? Strong. Okay. Is he hard or soft? Hard. Yeah, it's a little hard right now. Now, part of this, we've been friends a long time. Now, part of this is that Ben perceived intuitively that he had the mechanical advantage right now. And so he's capitalizing on it by sort of like extending his like sphere of influence. So he's applying hard pressure, hoping that it will buckle under that pressure. The same way when the swords touch and you push on the guy's sword, you hope that will buckle underneath. Right? He's hoping that happens. Right? Even if you didn't think about it consciously, that's what's going on. So this is going to affect, on a deeper level, that loop. Right? It's going to affect that loop. Because now I have to think in terms of hard versus soft. I have to think in terms of strong versus weak. And I have to think in terms of before versus after. Okay? And so all of those things are coming into this decision-making process. Now, what is the right canonical move for me to do against them right now? Zwerchhau. Okay, so take a look at Zwerchhau. Okay? So I'm here, right? He's hard. He is strong. So what do I need to be? I need to be stronger than he is, right? Strong, strong and weak are a spectrum, and you want to be further on the spectrum than he is. Hard and soft, though, are different. Okay? Do I want to be harder or softer than him? I want to be soft. Okay, I want to be soft. So I'm going to come in soft and strong. Do I want to go before or after? Before. The answer is always before. Okay, all right. So I'm going to go before. So here we are, and I go, and I come sideways. All right. Now a couple things happen. I went sideways, which means I was soft. I was yielding. Right. He was pushed through. Right. I was stronger though. Look at this. I'm right on my cross. I'm stronger. Okay. Cool. Now also see what happened. He had to bend. He angled himself towards me because of the way that I was moving. Which means which one of us is before and which one of us is after? I'm before. Not only did I strike first, but he changed what he was doing for me. Which means that he's way in the after. Which means that he is receiving less joy. Sorry. Right. He is dead. Okay? That's exactly right. Okay. You can break down everything that happens in the fight in these terms. And doing so will help you to intuit what's going on very naturally. All right? So, yes.
Is it bad that we have to learn these, or do we have to come up automatically?
No, you have to learn all that stuff, right? I mean, those guys who are like genius fencers, like they show up and from day one they can do amazing things, intuit a lot of this stuff. At some point in their lives or somewhere in their DNA, this stuff is just in there and they don't know where it is and they can't explain it to you, and they tend to be terrible teachers because they have no idea how it works. They just know it does. It's like you trying to teach English, right? Do you know why you say the in some places and the in other places? But somebody does, right? Somebody does, right? Linguists or English majors or English teachers know those things because they've learned how, right? You know who else knows? Non-native speakers, right? We are all probably non-native speakers of swordsmanship, which means we have to learn how to sword fight. We have to learn everything. There might be a couple things which we do natively, lucky us, right? For the most part, you got to figure that shit out, okay? All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Quick game. You're gonna break into groups of 3. And the groups over like this. Ben, come here. And Scott. All right. Huh? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Lincoln Hour doesn't care if you're left-handed. Here's the one place where Lincoln Hour gives a crap if you're left-handed. If you are left-handed, your opening strike should come from what side? Left. The left. Period. Don't break that rule. If you are right-handed, your opening strike comes from what side? Right. That's correct. Right? Don't break that rule. What if you're a lefty and he's a righty at the same time? What side do you guys strike from?
Left and right.
From your strong sides, right? Who wins?
Whoever's stronger.
Whoever's stronger, by what interpretation of strong? By this one, right? That stronger will win. Stronger won't win, stronger will win. Okay? All right? If you are equal, who wins? Nobody. You both get this. Lichtenauer, no, Lichtenauer cries. He rolls over in his grave. Double hits make Lichtenauer cry. Lichtenauer's never cried. Okay. So you're saying never double hit? Oh, that's not it. All right. So here's what you're gonna do, right? So these two guys are partners. I'm the third wheel. All right. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna start to fence. All right. They're gonna fence right now. Since you're not running in here, they're gonna fence slowly. If you guys want to wear full jackets and all that kind of stuff, you can go just like wall to wall. That's fine. But it'll take time, so probably just matching gloves, right? So fence appropriate to your gear level and experience level. And if you don't know really well the guy that you're fencing, have a conversation about it first. Hi, I'm Jake. I've only been doing this for a couple of weeks. I really have no idea what I'm doing. All right, cool. How about you not step in the face? Sounds good, Jake. Right? Like that's the conversation. It's okay to have the conversation. I'm wearing a mask, but I'm not wearing gloves. Please don't hit me in the hand. Okay, got it. We won't. All right? If you're wearing low gear or no gear or you're inexperienced, I want you to fence so slow it's painful. Like yoga slow. Okay? All right.
But yoga doesn't.
Hot yoga, right? Right. This is Zverhau yoga slow. 30 seconds later. It's actually not a bad way to train. I'm making a joke, but I'm not. It's a great idea. Okay, so here we go. So these guys are going to fence. I'm just going to stop them at some point. Are you guys ready? Stop. All right. Stop. Are you in the before and the after?
I have
If you don't know, you're in the after. Are you in the before or in the after? All right. So we've already learned something about what's going on in bed. All right. Okay, Scott, are you strong or are you weak?
A little weak.
Are you soft or are you weak?
Soft.
You're soft. Okay, but you're not weak. Why aren't you weak? Shoot it. All right. Okay, no, stop. You can see what I'm saying? But they've already touched swords. Okay. Here's the deal. Scott, if they touch swords, right? If they touch swords, it'll happen along fairly predictable angles, right? Whatever the case, here's the deal. Ben's point is out in front, right? Which means that if those swords clash, there's a good chance that Ben will be weak because he gets to hunt at that point, right? Okay. This is the downside to having your point up front. Okay, it's there to be taken. All right. Whereas Scott, he is close to his strong. Okay? Because he's close to it, he knows kind of where it is, feel it, right? It's right, it's pretty easy right now. All right? And so any movement he makes, there's a good chance that no matter what Ben does from here, when the swords clash, if Scott brings the sword to bear at all, it'll be strong versus weak, more than likely. Okay? So if you know that, you're strong. Now, you're soft though. You're hesitant, right? Hesitant is soft. Assertive is hard. Okay? All right. All right. Straight up. Fight. Stop. Okay. Can you rewind like half a second? Fast forward to half of a second? Like that. Perfect. Okay. All right. Are you hard or are you soft?
Soft.
All right. You're yielding, right? Are you strong or are you weak?
Strong.
Strong. Okay, good. Are you in the before or are you in the after?
After.
Okay, all right. So, are things going well for him right now? He's got one thing in his favor, right? He's strong. That's all he's got going in his favor right now. Okay? Are you hard or are you soft?
Hard.
Okay, you're pushing in, right? You're hard. Okay. Are you strong or are you weak?
Weak.
That's bad. Okay. Are you in the before or in the after?
Before.
Okay, so we got, he's in the before, that's good for him. He's strong, that's good for him. Hard and soft could go either way, but usually in attack, you tend to be hard, and in defense, it varies. All right, so I think there's like a 0.1 advantage in Scott's favor right? The other thing that happened that he can't recreate because it's really difficult is where his feet were. His feet weren't stable at the moment. So his feet were also soft, right? Which means there was just a whole lot of softness. There, it's really kind of fall apart. All right, so continuing from that position in 3, 2, 1, fence. Halt. All right, pretty cool. So, all right. So now, are you in the before or the after? He was in the after a second ago, though, wasn't he? What happened? He took it back. He was on the strong, and because he was on the strong and he was on the weak, because he was hard and he was soft, he was able to absorb that energy and then reverse that roll in the middle of his movement. Right? He broke up the OODA loop, but he also did that Nachschlag thing, right? He jumped in the middle of the time, okay, allowing him to reverse roll. So now he's in the 4, he's in the up. Are you strong or are you weak?
Strong.
You're strong. Now, the sword's moving, so there's a good chance that suddenly he'll be weak. But at that exact moment in time, he's strong. Okay? Are you hard or soft?
Hard.
Okay, yeah, you're currently pushing your heart. Okay. What are you right now? Before or after, in your opinion?
After.
After? Okay. Hard or soft?
Hard.
Hard? Okay. So they're both hard. This is interesting. All right, they're both hard. Strong or weak?
Weak.
So, given that information, he is before and hard and strong. He is after and hard and weak. Who's about to get killed? Scott. Okay. Right. In 3, 2, 1, go. Right. Go back to where you guys were. Don't start from there. Continue the movement that you were doing when we stopped. In 3, 2, 1, go. And there it is. Right. There it is. Now, Scott managed to drive his point into the bicep, right? Which it sucks for him because through the arm he hasn't got his heart and kill him, right? But he's also just been hit here. And since that cut originated over here and walked all the way around, it would hit hard in this very painful area. And Scott sort of did that, meaning that it wouldn't go into Ben's bicep. In fact, it might even chop because the weak hit it. So Scott's down half of an arm, right? Ben is probably scratched in the bicep, and that's the fight. Right? He goes, ah! And then he goes, fuck! On top of his head.
And then he's your father.
Pushes him off, right? He's like, now who's better? Right? Okay? So this is what you're gonna do. Get into threes, all right? Same guys that were outside before, go be outside now. Get into threes, pick a third wheel, and begin. And third wheel, just break it up, and then just ask those questions. You don't have to know the answer, you don't have to be a teacher. You just have to ask those questions, all right? Sure. And if you aren't in groups of threes, in 10 seconds, I will make everybody do 100 push-ups. 10, 9, 8, 7, I'm not kidding, 6, 5, 4, 3, all right, you're all three.
I thought you said this wasn't combat stress.
It's always a little stressful. All right, so, teams, right? Teams and things? Yeah. Okay, so the idea is you become experienced enough where you intuit these things. They just, you know what's going on at any point in time. All that information is being processed simultaneously. Okay? Now, you're not going to be there right now, but you'll get there. Right? You keep this up, you'll get there, and you'll be able to describe these things. This is a thing that you should do periodically. You should play this game. I have a couple of variations on this game that I play back in the club. And we did one just Thursday. We did one just on Thursday. And I caught myself thinking I was doing something other than what I was actually doing. And the game called it out. I was like, oh, wow. That's why I keep getting hit when I do that. Because I think I'm doing it right, but I'm not. I thought I was strong, but actually I was weak. It's that kind of thing, right? Okay, now, we're going to go into kind of the last phase of this thing. We'll probably go a little bit over time, but only a little. All right, the last thing is kind of now what, right? What are some things that you can do to get better at perceiving this and applying the 10 hours approach to the fight? We've already talked about the kind of the do's and the don'ts, the 10 commandments, if you will, right? Thou shalt and thou shalt not, right? Thou shalt not strike from the left if thou art right-handed. Okay? That doesn't mean ever, that just means the opening strike. Okay? Why? Because that opening strike needs to be as solid and as structurally sound as possible. That opening strike is also only going to be one of 4 strikes. Period. But Jake, Justin's thinking, what about the Duraflex? What about the feeler? What about the yeah later? Okay, right? That's getting into artfully breaking those rules. All right, so let's start with those rules. Now, I want to talk a little bit about something that Lieutenant says. Lieutenant says that the point, right? Oh, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Right? Okay, spread out, so that you can get into gardens. You're not going to be fencing anybody. There's room here for everybody, but spread out a little bit. You can use the space here to my side. Just don't use the space where I'm standing. Then there'll be a synchronicity and all that. Okay, so great, you got to get started. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want everyone to take up the guard of long point. Everybody show me long point. Okay, you hold your sword out in front, like point it towards the guy's eye. Perfect. Okay, relax, shake it up. Okay, now what I want you to do is, I want you to take all your presence of mind, right? All of your focus, if you will, your very consciousness, right? We're going to be a little metaphysical. And I want you to put it into your feet. I want you to feel the floor forward. I want you to feel your toes and the ground. I want you to really feel your stability in your stance. I want you to get into your guard. Okay, ready? Begin.
Just go long point.
Yeah, long point. Okay. Okay, relax. Do it again. All right, good. Relax. All right. Now, I want you to take all of your focus, right? All of your focus. And I want you to put it into the point of your sword, the very tip of the sword, right? The pointy, tippy, stabby guy with a thing at the end, right? I want to put all of your presence of mind into that part of your sword, and I want you to take up the same guard, right? Go. Okay, relax. Do it again. Relax. Do it again. All right, relax. Okay. Now I want you to take all that consciousness, all of that focus, right? And I want you to put it into the strong of your sword. Okay? I want you to put it into this space in your sword right here where my sword is. You're going to put it all right there. Okay? And I want you to take up long point. All right, ready? Go. Okay, relax. Go. All right. Relax. Go. All right, relax. I want you to take all that focus and put it back in your feet. And I want you to take up ox. I don't care what's that. Okay? I want you to take up ox. Right? Go. All right, in your feet. Put it down. right? All in your feet. Put it all in your feet. Go to ox. All right, put it down. I want you to put it all in the point of the sword. All in the point of the sword. Into ox. Go. Good. Again. Go. All right, relax. Strong with the sword. Strong with the sword. Ready? Go. Again. Go. All right, good. Relax. Relax. Okay, I want everyone to go into full time. All right, all right. You're going to take a cut. This cut can be slow, like color should be, so it's going to pat you back. All right. We should take a slow cut from Montag down to Alber Vexel. Okay. So downward diagonal cut. All right. Don't hit the guy. Calibrate. Make sure you can do it without hitting the guy in front of you. Okay. All right. Cool. Good. All right. Okay. Good. Now here we go. You got it. You got your spot. Okay. I want you to put all of your focus into your feet. All of your focus into your feet, your footwork, and slowly cut. All right. Reset. I want you to put all of your focus into the point of your sword. Okay? And cut. Okay. Resume or recover. Do that again. Point of the sword. Push all of your consciousness in the point of that sword. Cut. Okay. Resume or recover. All right. I'm going to put all of that into the strong of your sword. All of it into the strong of your sword. This is going to be harder. Right? Really push all of your awareness into the strong of the sword. All right. And cut. All right. Resume or recover rather. And again. All right. Relax. Okay. Now, how does this feel different? They don't. Yeah.
With the, when I'm thinking about this, the strong, it's more of a, like this.
You found it tended to lead a little
Yes.
bit, right? Did you find the thing you were focusing on tended to lead? Right? It just did that, right? Like you don't know why, it just did, right? Okay, so what does that mean if our focus is on our feet? What happens? You lead with our feet. Is leading with your feet generally the right idea? No. There's times when you want to do it. There's times when you want to put all of your consciousness in your feet, like when you're falling. Okay? But other than that, you don't actually want to put all that down in your feet. Okay? Because what happens if you move your feet like well before you attack? What are you doing? Telegraphing, which is exposing your what?
Openings.
Exposing your openings, it's exposing your loop, right? It's allowing the other guy to get into your loop, right? It allows him, it gives him more information to compute and to fire out against you. Unless you're trying to overwhelm him with information, which is another strategy. All right, when you put all of that focus into the point of your sword, what happened? You can reach further away, right? How did that affect the guards that you went into?
Found it less stable.
Found it less stable? Okay. All right.
I found they were more threatening.
Yeah. Because you're kind of projecting that threat out there. When you put all the focus into the strong of the sword, what did you feel and see? You felt solid, but you also felt defensive, right? Felt defensive. So check it out. Lichtenauer says that the ort, which is the point, right, the point of the sword, is the center of all swordsmanship, right? Okay. Which could have people thinking something like, you know, that swordsmanship works like this, right, with that point kind of staying in this sort of middle space, right? And there are guys who fence like that, and frankly, all they're doing is they're leaving their weak out there, and you sit there weak and strike them in the face. It's easy. Okay. So you don't necessarily want to do that unless that's what you meant to do, because you know what effect that's going to gain for you, right? But I do think it means that whenever possible, you should be projecting that consciousness out to that point. I've done this with a couple of groups now, and I've watched very carefully how their mechanics change, right? And there are always exceptions, right? Like some of you didn't do this, okay, but most people did. When we put the focus in the feet, and I say get it along the point, you see this. Right? There's like, okay. When I say put the focus in the point, you see this. Like no matter where the feet are, right? And when I say, you know, put your focus in the strong, it's kind of like what you said. They kind of come like this. That the point somehow subconsciously is not in the same place, and their structure is a little bit more behind this, right? You especially see it up here when you go into ox, right? Feet first, go into ox. Point first, go into ox. strong first, going to ox, right? That piece tends to move first, because that's where your processing power is directed, right? So when you're fencing, when you're fighting, when you're in the fore, where do you want your focus? On the point, right? You want your focus in the point, okay? When you are fencing in the knock, not because you chose to be there, but because tough luck you are, right? Where do you put your focus? In the strong, okay, in the strong, okay? And then as soon as, because your focus is there, as soon as you feel it touch, where do you move your focus? To the point. It flies forward, right? So you're going to be taking that focus, and it's going to be doing this, bang, 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 bang. It's going to be going from strong to weak, from before to after, right? And that's going to allow you to do things like wind, right? What's a wind do? Winding, I've mentioned winding a few times. Winding is one of those things that you're going to spend a lot of time working on. Winding, in its simplest terms, is the twisting of the sword, okay? So like our swords are bound, right? Okay, like this. There's a very narrow angle right here, okay? I want to move his sword out of the way so that I can stab him in the face. I go like that, and his sword comes out of the way that much, right? That's what winding does. Winding does another thing too. The swords are sharp. Let's see, Ben. Sorry, Jim. Ben. And I'm going to use this because these are both fairly wide-bladed swords, but also they're pretty chewed up, so they're going to bite a little bit like sharp swords bite. And Ben tells me that you guys do a demonstration of sharp swords biting in the beginner's class, so you should have some sense of that, right? But we're here, right? Get to your like most chewed up edge.
I was ground down.
Ah, you suck. All right. Where's Justin? Yeah, bring Justin's here. I think Justin's off. Right?
This is a fucking hacksaw.
We're gonna simulate a sharp beam using the dullest thing imaginable. All right. Right, well, check it out. Yeah, that feels like a sharp. All right. It's funny what it does. All right. So we're right here. I want to get this point in his face. I can turn it like that, and I gain a little bit of strength in the bind, which is cool. But here's the deal. I can do this, and he can do that, but if I start doing that, he's going to feel it, and they're going to move together like this, right? If we're both doing this closing thing, right? So I wind, I do this, I go, now it slides easy, I go up to his weak, I relock it, now I'm on his strong, and it's going to do this. His sword's going to move with mine. And they go, bang, I jam it into his face, and he dies, right? So the idea with the windings are, I'm taking strong if I don't have it. Like I don't have strong right now, but I want it. So I lift my sword, twist it, that's the wind, and then now no matter how hard he pushes, so that's what the winding is. And some of you found that you were doing that anyway, and there's a lot of permutations and variations of that. But check it out. If I think about my focus, right, from here, we're fencing, I'm thinking about my point, right? And did you see how my point went like that over his face right when we did that? That was me, throwing my mind into my point, right? It was, whoop, and I realized I threw too much. And bring it back, right? Do it again, right? So we're here, right? Here we go. Boom, okay. I threw out my point just a little bit, but I hesitated a little, and I brought some of my focus back here because I was afraid he was going to hit me, which is what happens. And because of that, I didn't win the bind. Okay, well, now I got to win the bind. So, my focus is here. I feel suddenly that he is bending and I am strong, right? Which means he is now soft and I am hard. So I go like that, and we go right for his face, or down along that line, into his guts or whatever, okay? That's what the winding is. By moving the consciousness right from here to here, that makes those things easy to do. It's a little metaphysical, isn't it, right? It's almost like, it's a little like chi-like or whatever, extending the bubble of your presence, you know, that kind of stuff. This is why we use this stuff. Because the actual physics and psychology behind this are complicated and I don't understand them. Right? So I invented a thunder god to explain the lightning. Right? So I've got this thing about moving your focusedness to the point, right? It's really like something you're doing with your pinky that I can't describe. So you just do that and your body knows what to do. Okay? Right? Your body is built to process magic before it's built to process science. It's sad, but it's true. Okay? So just harness that shit. So that's one thing. Here's a second thing that I want you to pay attention to. We're going to go back and play this game one last time, that'll be class. There's a second thing that I want you to pay attention to, and that's a thing called the Drei Wunder, right? The three wounders. The three wounders. And I think it might be a play on the word, on a play on words, because there's also the 3 wonders. But it works like this. What are the 3 wonders, Jim?
Strike, thrust, and,
Yep, and slice. Right. Strike, thrust, and slice. Right.
I knew the word, I was like.
Come back here.
That.
All right. So here's the deal. There's 3 ways you can hurt a dude. Okay, not counting the pommel, which is kind of special. There is the how, which is the hew, right? It's the hew down a tree, the cleaving cut. All right. So there is the cleaving cut, right? There is the ort, which is the point, right? And then there is the schnitt. Schnitt is a word that means to cut, the same way that you cut a piece of cheese. We tend to translate that as slice, because you can say I'm going to slice the cheese. But really, cut is a better translation for it. The problem is that we also call this a cut, don't we? Right? So that messes us up. It messes us up in English, right? In German, this how can only be this, right? It's a chop, right? So we could say the chop, the stab, and the cut. So when people think of slicing in English, we tend to think of a movement kind of like this, right? Or like this, okay? That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is a movement, sure. Is a movement that's like this, okay? It's like you would have a block of cheese, you put a knife in it, you press the knife through the cheese. There might be a little bit of like forward tilt, so you can use the edge a little bit more efficiently, but it's not, I didn't go for the cheese. Right, you just go, okay? That's what a schnitt is. So there's 3 ways. You chop a dude, you stab a dude, or you press that blade down into the dude, right? There are, by the way, only 2 places that we are told to slice. The arms and the mouth.
What? Not the neck?
Well, you know, the neck is kind of an extension. You slice the mouth hard enough, you get to the neck, so. Yeah, the neck happens too, but think about the clothing today, right? The clothing today might have had a, collar kind of thing, right? Mouth, no collar. And that's the other thing too. The slice is painful even against the guy wearing linen sleeves, but it's not going to cut it, right? Super crazy sharp sword is only going to go through a couple layers of linen. If he's wearing 4 or 5 layers of linen, as he is likely to be doing back in the period, a slice is mostly just pain compliance, right? You're moving his arms and it hurts. Okay? And you'll know that it hurts because you're going to do it. You're going to do it with a blunt sword against your bare arm. You're like, ah, right? So it works. All right. When do we use these? All arts have Länge und Masse, right? It's like an hour. They have reach and moderation, or measure, right? Measured meaning moderation, not meaning distance, right? So meaning a right neuron, not you. Okay. So here's the deal. You want to use a cut when you can reach the opponent's opening with a cut. All right? You want to use a thrust when you can reach the opponent's opening with a thrust. So if we're talking about Nachreisen and Ansetzen again, those movements that we do in the after, he cuts at me, ooh, I'm lucky. Am I going to attack with a cut or a thrust right now? Obviously, right? Let's say that, go back, let's say I'm like this, and he cuts, cut or a thrust right now? Thrust, exactly, okay? So it's the right time to do that move, all right? I'm not going to be like this, and he misses, oh, I should thrust him. Right? Or vice versa. We're not going to do that, okay? The other thing that happens, right, is when we've bound up. So we're here, I opened with a cut, but it failed. Now does it make more sense to cut him again or to thrust him? Right. What's closer to him? The point, right? Okay, so I got a line, so I can do that, and there's the point. Let's say that in the process of winding up to do that, he does something like that, right? Okay, now, I'm not in a position where I can effectively thrust him. Nope. Okay. Could I cut him? Like with a chop, with a cue? Yeah. I could come around like that. I could. But let's say that he's really fast, right? And as I come around, that happens when I get hit. So that's bad, right? So instead, I might do something like this. Come down hard on his hand. Now, is this a hew or is it a slice? It's a slice, right? Now, if I get enough of a rotation, it might be a hew. I might luck out, right? That arm might come off. That'd be awesome. Not for me. But chances are, instead, what happens is we're here and I bring it up, or whatever, or there, or I just get it there where there's not enough impact to really hurt him, right? Now I got to control him before this happens, right? So the blade is there. Don't let it go. Just go like this. Right? And that's kind of the idea. I'm going to look for my opportunities to cut and to thrust and to slice. So later, when you get to the 8 windings, you'll say, there are 4 windings, which are actually 8 windings. You'll get to that later. Which are actually 24 windings. That part's easy. There's 8 windings, and there's a cut for each winding, and a thrust for each winding, and a slice for each winding. Hence the 24 windings. Okay? So when you get to that, that's what's going on there. All right? What I want you to do now is we're going to go back and we're going to play that same game that we just played. All right? You're welcome to pick new groups or the same groups. I don't care. Was it a good thing or a bad thing that I just did that? It was a bad thing. Why was it a bad thing?
Because you gave us a choice.
Because I gave you a choice, and choices take what?
Time.
Correct, right? And you watch, it's going to be a cluster. All right, so, because some of you are like, I want to keep my group, and others are like, I want a new group. You can't have both ways, guys. All right, so we're going to do the same game, but here's what's going to change, right? Here's what's going to change in this. The first thing is that you're going to add a question. You're going to add, where is your focus right now? Is it in the point? Is it in the strong? Is it in your feet? Or is it someplace else? I mentioned that we played this game last Thursday and that I got caught by one of my guys with my focus. Was something in a weird place. It was my focus. I was standing off, I was fencing a guy, right? And I was like this, right? And he goes, stop, where is your focus? I was like, it's in my hands. And I realized that I was like, I was thinking about my grip. I'm like, I need my grip to do this thing. Where's it gonna be? And so all my attention was here, right? All my attention was in my hands, which meant I was guaranteed to get hit. In fact, you will find that you usually get hit in the hands when you've been thinking about your hands. In fact, whatever you're thinking about is usually where you get hit.
So don't think.
Don't think, right? Or don't think about something on your sword so that you get hit in your sword, right? Think about the point of the sword, right? Whereas I found if I'm here and thinking, putting all of my focus on the point of my sword, even though it's behind me, right? I'm going to cut, and like Jim said earlier, I'm going to cut long. I'm going to go with good cutting structure, right? You know. As opposed to if I'm thinking about the strong of my sword, right? Right there. Put all that focus there. So I want you to think about that, all right? And then, for those of you that are going out there and are more experienced, you find all this to be too easy, I want you to be thinking very carefully about, should I cut, should I thrust, or should I slice? If the previous content is as much as you can deal with, just deal with that content. But if you can add that question, should I, then when they ask you, say, I'm strong, he's soft, I'm in the 4, my focus is into my point, I should thrust, right? I should cut, I should slice, all right? See if you can walk yourself through that process periodically, all right? The third wheel shouldn't need to ask the questions now. He's just gonna stop you. He can wait for you to run down the list. If you forget, they're gonna prompt you with the question that you forgot because your own loop is skipping like a record, okay? You got it? All right, we're gonna do this for about 5 minutes, not long, so go. Ready with the distractions going in? That would be awesome. Alright. Gather around. Come on in. Have a seat, go on. We're going to be here for like 2 more minutes. Have a seat. I'll sit with you. That was pretty good. Alright, so more sword yoga. Alright. Okay, so there's a lot more you can do with that, obviously. There's a lot of other stuff that, time willing we would look at. By time willing, I mean over the course of weeks and months and years. There's this question about explosiveness and force and strength and speed and a lot of these kinds of things. And something that I want everyone to understand is that as you learn each of these things, right, as you're able to shorten your decision-making process, you want to be training your body to do all of these things violently. By which I mean forcefully, invasively, meant to hit the other guy, to collapse his weapon, to collapse through the structure, that kind of thing. That doesn't mean learning to hit hard, it means learning to hit hard right, if that makes any sense, right? Can you fence in this kind of serene way? Yes, you can, but only if you have really figured out your body mechanics, only if you know how to turn your hip, and squeeze your fingers and extend your arms in exactly the right way at the right time. And if you do that, you can look very relaxed and hit them up real hard, right? And that's where you want to go with these things. You want to look relaxed, but you're not relaxed. You're tense when you need to be tense. You're relaxed when you need to be relaxed. You're hard when you need to be hard, and soft when you need to be soft. You know where your strong is, and you know where your weak is, right? You know where these things are, you're able to make the right decision. And then, one of the things that Tanara says is, when you make your attack into that chosen opening, that you pay no heed to what your opponent does, right? So you don't pay attention to what he does, right? That doesn't mean you don't pay any attention to your opponent. It means you already paid attention to your opponent. You already chose your movement based on what you observed, how you oriented yourself against that, you made the decision, and then once that decision is made, you don't second guess it. You dump everything into it right there. The whole comes out, full force, full power, and you crush that single movement, right? And if that single movement is suddenly interrupted, it's stopped, it's unable to continue, bang, you're right at the front of that loop again, right? Why did it stop? Where did it stop? I feel, right? I feel. Okay, all right, I got it. It's my weak. Well, that's not good, right? Better whine, so that's my strong. Ha! That's my strong. Stab in the face, right? That's the kind of thing that you're going to start training for. So spend time training these actions even before you know when to use them correctly, right? Train the Zwerchhau against a target, right? Go against Bob over here, the rubber guy that wears the mask, and just Zwerch that dude's head into oblivion, right? Learn the best mechanics to hit Bob in the head, okay? So that later, as your decision-making process catches up, you'll be a real terror, right? Intentionally limit yourself to fight very strictly according to the Tanara rules. And then over time, you'll see that he breaks his own rules quite a bit, right? There's lots of places where he breaks his own rules. You need to understand why he's doing that and what effect that accomplishes. All those things also have certain vulnerabilities that accompany them. So you need to be able to have that judgment to know when that vulnerability is acceptable or not. And until you have that judgment, you probably don't want to do that move. If you find you're getting a lot of double hits, right? If you find that you and your opponent are hitting each other at the same time, I would go back and play a lot of these kind of OODA loop games, right? Or a lot of these strong, weak, hard, soft, four knock, third wheel kind of games, all right? Because chances are you're making a decision when you think something is the case, but it's not, right? There's also a good chance that you're playing tag and you're not sword fighting, right? You're just trying to land a touch, and you're not really thinking about the fact the whole point is to not have you cleave your head into two pieces, right? That's bad. Anyway, okay, so we ran along. I apologize. I hope that this was useful for you guys, that you had a good time, that you get to move your sword around a little bit, and that this influences your practice going from here on out. Are there any questions? Yes?
So whenever you're talking about your focus being on your point, is that throughout the entire OODA, or is that only like after you decide?
That is, I think that's part of where, it's kind of outside of it. It plays into it. It's part of the environment, right? It's, to go back to the fighter jet analogy this is meant for, where your focus is the direction that you're currently headed, right? That's something that you chose. You chose in advance, right? You can change it, but you're only going to change it because of something, right? There's going to be a reason that you change it. Otherwise, you're going to leave it where it is because that's one less decision you have to make, right? So if you're planning on being first, which I hope that you are, you should probably have that focus, for example, on the tip of your sword, because the sword is the center of, or the tip is the center of swordsmanship, right? So you're thinking about that tip right away. Now, if things go badly suddenly, right, you need to change the direction of that airplane, you need to move that focus into destroying your sword real quick. Or you're suddenly backpedaling like a mofo and you need to move it into your feet, and that's what you do, right? But just be aware, when you're doing that, you're in the knot, right? He's in your loop, okay? And you gotta do something to get out of it, right? Does that help? Okay, other question?
Jim asked about it earlier, but I sort of want to go into more detail about it, about the two ways to attack somebody, and one of them being like Nachreisen and Ansetsen, as like he said that it's you being in the after, right? So like, are you stuck in that person's loop whenever you're doing that, or is that like you kind of you being in the war, like intentionally? Like,
yeah, no. What that is like, let's say like I walk into the fight, like I'm gonna fight you, and I have every intention of being in the fore because that's what I meant to do. But stuff goes wrong. I hesitate. I'm not focused for whatever reason. I'm distracted, or you're just faster than I am. Like oh crap! right? Like, she's moving. When that happens, I want to not get hit. In some cases, the person who swings first was out of range. In other cases, it's actually really simple. You can attempt an onset or a knock Gryson when the guy just changes guards, right? Like, if he's in, you know, fluke, right, or he's pointing his sword at you, and he goes like that. As he's pulling that sword back, you just stab him in the mouth, right? Because anytime he's moving, and that movement isn't at you, that's a space, that's a vulnerability, it's a window that you can just go right into, right? And sometimes it's because he attacks and he misses and then you go, and sometimes it's because he decides to attack, right? But whatever the case, he moved first, you're reacting, you're responding to his stimulus, so you're in the knot, right?
Whether it was intentional or not.
Whether it was intentional or not, you're in the knot.
Okay.
Now, as soon as it's coming in towards his face, if he sees it and chooses to parry, now he's in the knot, and that's good. If he doesn't see it and doesn't choose to parry, he's dead, and that's good.
Okay.
So it's a win-win, right? If you see him start to move and there's a gap, just ram that point right into his nostril. It's always good, right?
Are there students that wrote this down because he didn't write this down, or is there?
So what he wrote down was the recital, was this poem. And the whole purpose of the poem was to immortalize his system in a way that was not decipherable by people who were not his students. So it was transmitting his system essentially in code. Because back then it was a really big deal. You wanted to hide your system because people knew your system, that would make it easier for them to defeat you. And it's his livelihood. It's probably what he sold for a living, and so if it's just freely available, then he's not going to make a lot of money, right? It's kind of like early DRM, right? A way of keeping people from knowing what your stuff is. Fiore de Oliveri, the guy I mentioned, Florists earlier, in the front of his book is very clear. It's very clear in his book, and we know that he wrote his book. But he says at the beginning, there's this whole preface like, hey, listen, don't share this with like peasants and foreigners and women. That would be bad. So Fiore just he kind of had a disclaimer up front. You know, please don't share this with other people. Like then I was like, I'm encrypting this shit.
Right.
But then like, our students were like, woo, free code, and they decrypted it and published it. Right.
Like as an example, like I have the book right here. Like what's in the poem for Zverkal, like the thing we were doing that you just learned? The poem is just Zverkal takes what comes from Foam Talk. That's it. That's all it tells you.
Right. The whole how of it, all 18 paragraphs of how, right, is in the gloss. It's in what the students wrote down. So if we didn't have those guys, we'd be looking at a really hard to decipher poem. Right. Anything else?
So you said that when you strike and something goes south, you have a preloaded kind of secondary.
Right.
Does it matter if they know that that's what you're going to do? Because the reason why I ask is a lot of times I've heard that I have a 2-hit combo. I go boom, boom.
Okay, so having a 2-hit combo is it's combination fencing, it's common fencing, which isn't inherently bad, right? People talk about common fencing and it's like, oh, common fencing is bad. No, Lichtenauer thought common fencing was bad because what he was doing was bad, right? But it's not bad. Combination fencing can be very, very effective, and we see evidence for combination fencing in a lot of other places, including Masters all the way until like present. However, Lichtenauer's approach is not a combination attack, right? Lichtenauer's approach is committed strike, and then based on, and then there's a very, very short, like miniature OODA loop that follows that strike up. So I strike to your face, right? So I strike to your face, you engage with a sword, and I'm immediately pursuing with the point, right? The process of pursuing with the point also keeps my sword on yours, which is sending me feedback, right? Because I feel. And this is really important. I didn't mention this overtly, but if you follow the rules, you can't help but do this. There's only 2 ways to hit the guy, right? He moves and you attack into a gap, or you're bound on his sword and you move his sword somehow and you thrust him, right? Which means the only time that you're not bound with his sword is when you're in the knock and you're in trouble, right? Otherwise, you want to be on the guy's sword. Like being on the guy's sword is good because you can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it, physically feel it with your hands, right? So you want to know where it is. The scariest thing is be winding the guy's sword and suddenly his sword is gone. Like, shit, where'd it go? Right? Well, there it is, right? That's what you're kind of worried about. So going like bang, bang is hitting and then coming out of that bind without ever testing to see what it is. So you hit, you test, and then you fall, right? And that test can be very quick. A great example is Zornort, right? The guy cuts, boom, I slam on his blade, and then bang, jam the sword right into his face. That's a preloaded thing, but here's how it's cool. This is why a thrust is the best thing to test with. Because a thrust is actively feeling. It's feeling for the light switch, right? It's active, but it's also threatening. So, bang, swords are there, I tread around that point into his face. Oh, I can't! If the point isn't going to go into his face, guess what? He's hard. Oh, I know a technique for hard. Jupiter, right? Or Urshavina, right? However, if you try to slam the thing into his face, and he moves, and it doesn't hit, but the sword keeps moving, he's soft, even though he missed, Muterin, stabbed him on his right? So it comes down, and this is why I encourage people to copy the brush strokes of the master, right? Because he has a response to every eventuality already built in. And we spend all this time as fencers trying to like teach ourselves the responses to all these things that could happen. It's in the book. It's already there, right? We don't have to reinvent it. We just have to interpret it and learn it. And most of the hard interpretation work has been done. When I started this stuff 15, 16 years ago, we were literally the first guys to read this stuff in English. We're like, the Zverkov takes what comes from Vomtag. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. What comes from Vomtag, that means from the roof. So it takes things what comes from the roof. The bird comes from the roof. Yeah, the rain comes from the roof. Turns out it's a cut. So I mean, we started like having no idea what the hell was going on, right? And so a lot of this work has been done. The other cool thing is there's still lots of room for interpretation. The way that I do it Krumpa now is different from how I did it 2 years ago, is different from how I did it 2 years before that, is different from how I did it 2 years before that. And it's one of the exciting things about historical European martial arts is that we have not, in fact, figured it all out. There are techniques that I would teach you. You gave it to Jake. Show me how you do Zornhau. I will show you how I do Zornhau. And next time you see me, be like, Jake, how do you do Zornhau? And I will show you a totally different way to do Zornhau. Because I'm working on that right now. I'm not totally 100% satisfied with what I'm doing. I don't feel like it's as airtight as it should be. There are other techniques like Zverkov. I think I've got Zverkov down, like airtight. And yet, one of my guys, one of my senior guys came to me the other day and said, hey, I got a slight tweak to Zverkov. I'll be damned, it's better. Right? It's fantastic. You guys get to contribute in that way, right? Even though we've been at this for a while, we've got interpretations for stuff, you get to contribute. 10 years from now, you guys will be doing a lesson on how we looked in our approach to the fight, and it'll be based on totally better information than what I did here. That's one of the really cool things about HEMA. It's constantly growing and evolving. And it's funny, we are racing backwards to get to the words of a single set of dead masters. So you think it'd be the most calcified thing in the world, but it's kind of the opposite, right? We'll never know for sure if we got there. So we're probably going to crisscross the truth constantly, right? Hopefully the variation around that center line will get smaller and smaller over the years. I think it has. But that's part of what's fun about this. If, by the way, you don't think that's an exciting thing about what you're doing here, you should probably pick up a different sword method. There's a lot of it out there. But if you're if you are a seeker for truth, then HEMA is like the hobby for you. It's freaking awesome. So, all right. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for hanging out with me later. When you would, we were just talking about this actually, but this is something that we do to end classes often. There's an old tradition when you entered or exited the guild hall, fencing guild hall back in the day, you would salute the brethren, which would be the other fencers. You would salute the master, and you would salute the harness, which we believe to be the coat of arms that belong to the school. Metaphorically, you would just salute 3 times, right? And so we'll salute once, twice, thrice, right? Unless you have a sword, you salute once, twice, thrice, right? So, good night.